He was a searcher. He was alone in that there was no one really, when he was younger, that...
At 80 years old, Priscilla Presley just did something she spent half a century carefully avoiding. She confirmed it, not with words necessarily, not in some tearful interview where she suddenly found her conscience. No, this confirmation came the way truth always does when you've been hiding it for decades. Through action, through legal maneuvers, through decisions that reveal exactly what the priorities have always been. And what she confirmed is this: it was never about protecting Elvis's legacy. It was always about protecting her access to it. For 50 years, Priscilla has maintained one of the most successful public relations campaigns in entertainment history. She positioned herself as the devoted guardian of Elvis Presley's memory, the woman who understood him, the ex-wife who put aside personal hurt to preserve what he built, the mother who managed his estate with wisdom and care, always thinking about what Elvis would have wanted. It was a beautiful story, a compelling narrative, the kind of thing that makes for great television interviews and best-selling memoirs. And most of the world believed it because she told it so well, so consistently, for so long that it became accepted fact. But here's the thing about carefully constructed images. They require constant maintenance, constant vigilance. You can't let the mask slip, not even for a moment, because the moment you do, people start seeing what was always underneath. And at 80, facing mortality and legacy questions of her own, Priscilla Presley just let the mask slip. The confirmation came through the legal battle with Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, Lisa Marie's daughter. When Lisa Marie Presley died suddenly in January 2023, the cracks that had existed privately for years suddenly became public record. Because Lisa Marie had made changes to her will. Changes that removed Priscilla as a trustee and put her own children, Riley and Benjamin, in control of the Presley estate. Think about that for a moment. Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter who Priscilla claimed to be protecting all those years, the child whose inheritance Priscilla was supposedly guarding, that daughter grew up and legally removed her mother from control. That's not a small decision. That's not a paperwork oversight. That's a daughter saying very clearly, "I don't trust you with my father's legacy." And when Lisa Marie died, Priscilla could have honored that decision. She could have stepped back gracefully, allowed her granddaughter to take the reins, supported the transition that Lisa Marie had clearly wanted. She could have proven finally that it really was about family and legacy and doing what's right. She didn't. Instead, Priscilla immediately challenged the will. She went to court. She fought her own granddaughter for control of an estate that Elvis built, that Lisa Marie inherited, that Lisa Marie explicitly wanted her children to manage. And in that fight, in that refusal to let go, Priscilla confirmed what people have suspected for decades. This was never about guardianship, it was about ownership. Because here's what that legal challenge revealed. If Priscilla truly believed she'd been managing the estate in Lisa Marie's best interest all those years, if she genuinely thought her stewardship had been wise and beneficial, then Lisa Marie's decision to remove her would have been baffling. Hurtful, maybe, but ultimately something to respect, because it was Lisa Marie's inheritance to control as she saw fit. But Priscilla didn't respect it. She fought it, tooth and nail, which means she knew. She knew that losing control of the estate meant losing control of the narrative, losing control of the business, losing control of the Priscilla Presley brand that she'd spent 50 years building on Elvis's name. The settlement came eventually. Riley Keough remains in control of Graceland and the estate. Priscilla got a financial payout and retained certain rights. The family avoided a prolonged public court battle, but the damage was done. The truth was out, not through testimony or evidence presented in court, but through the simple fact that the fight happened at all. You don't fight your granddaughter for control of your ex-husband's estate if your priority is family harmony and legacy preservation. You fight that battle when your financial interests and your public identity are threatened. When the empire you built is at risk of being dismantled by the very family you claim to be protecting. And that's the confirmation. That's what Priscilla revealed at 80 years old. All the speeches about honoring Elvis, all the interviews about being the keeper of his memory, all the carefully worded statements about family and legacy and doing what Elvis would have wanted. When it came down to an actual choice, when Lisa Marie made a decision from beyond the grave about who should control her father's legacy, Priscilla chose herself. She chose control over respect. She chose money over family unity. She chose her own interests over her daughter's final wishes. That tells you everything you need to know about what the priorities have always been. Now, the public story you'll read in mainstream media is softer, of course. It focuses on the settlement, on the resolution, on everyone moving forward. Priscilla's representatives will talk about protecting her rights, about ensuring fair treatment, about complicated estate law and technical provisions in trust documents. But strip away the legal language and the PR spin, and you're left with a simple truth. A mother fought her granddaughter for control of money and property that came from a man she divorced in 1973. 50 years after that divorce ended, 4.5 decades after Elvis died, she fought for control that her own daughter had explicitly taken away from her. That's not guardianship, that's not family, that's not love or devotion or preservation. That's business, cold, calculated business. And the fact that it happened when Priscilla is 80 years old, facing the end of her own story, knowing that history will judge how she handled Elvis's legacy, that makes it even more revealing. Because if she truly believed her own narrative, if she genuinely thought she'd been the faithful steward of Elvis's memory, she would have let go. She would have trusted the next generation. She would have allowed Riley Keough to honor her mother's wishes without a fight. But she couldn't, because letting go would mean admitting that it was never really about Elvis at all. It was about Priscilla Presley. It always has been. And at 80 years old, she just confirmed it. Let's be very clear about the timeline here, because the timeline exposes everything. Priscilla Presley married Elvis Presley in 1967. They divorced in 1973, 6 years of marriage. Elvis died in 1977, which means for 4 years before his death, Priscilla was his ex-wife, not his partner, not his companion, his former spouse who had legally ended their relationship and moved on with her life. In most divorces, that would be the end of the story. You separate, you rebuild, you become your own person again, separate from the identity you shared during the marriage, especially when you're young. Priscilla was only 28 years old when Elvis died. Most of her adult life was still ahead of her. She could have been anyone, done anything, built any identity she wanted. But here's what she chose instead. She chose to build her entire post-divorce existence on being Elvis Presley's ex-wife. Not just acknowledging that chapter of her life, but making it the foundation of everything that came after. Her career, her celebrity, her business ventures, her public identity, all of it constructed on 6 years of marriage to a man who'd been gone for nearly 5 decades. Think about how unusual that is, how calculated, because she didn't keep the Presley name out of sentiment. She kept it because the name is currency. Priscilla Presley has no market value in Hollywood. No book deals, no documentary consultations, no licensing agreements. But Priscilla Presley, that name opens every door. That name gets meetings with studio executives. That name sells memoirs and commands appearance fees and generates business opportunities worth millions. She knew it from the beginning. The moment Elvis died, she understood exactly what she had. Not just guardianship of Lisa Marie's inheritance, but access to a brand that would only grow more valuable with time. Elvis Presley wasn't just a celebrity. He was becoming a legend, an icon, a Chinese-letter cultural touchstone that would transcend generations, and Priscilla positioned herself as the gatekeeper to that legend. Strategy was brilliant, really, ruthlessly effective. She wrote books positioning herself as the woman who truly knew Elvis, the insider with the real story. She gave interviews where she'd share intimate details, personal memories, behind-the-scenes glimpses that only a wife would know. She consulted on films and documentaries, shaping how Elvis's story got told to new generations. And with every book sold, every interview given, every project she influenced, the narrative became more entrenched. Priscilla Presley is the authority on Elvis. If you want to know the real story, you go to her. She was there, she lived it. She understands him in ways nobody else could. Except here's the problem with that narrative. Elvis's actual family, the people who knew him before Priscilla ever arrived, the blood relatives who lived with him at Graceland and shared his life for decades, they're telling a very different story. And they've been systematically excluded from the conversation. When was the last time you saw Elvis's cousins consulted on a major Elvis project? When did a documentary feature extended interviews with the Presley family members who actually grew up with him? When has the media ever sought out the people who knew Elvis as a child, as a teenager, as a young man before the fame machine consumed everything? It doesn't happen because Priscilla controls the access. She's positioned herself as the singular voice, and anyone who contradicts her version gets marginalized, dismissed as bitter relatives, accused of jealousy or trying to profit off Elvis's name. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so tragic. And here's where the illusion really starts to crack, because Priscilla can't have it both ways, even though she's tried for 50 years. She can't simultaneously claim to be the devoted protector of Elvis's legacy while also building a personal brand that has nothing to do with him. But that's exactly what she's done. The acting career, the reality television shows, the celebrity friendships with A-list Hollywood figures, the fashion collaborations and luxury brand partnerships, the red carpet appearances at events that have zero connection to Elvis Presley or his music. She's leveraged the Presley name to build a celebrity identity that serves her interests, her social climbing, her desire to be relevant in circles that would never have known Priscilla Presley existed. And every single time she's introduced, every article written about her, every caption on every photograph, it's Priscilla Presley. Never just Priscilla, never her maiden name, always Presley, because the name is the brand and the brand is the business. Meanwhile, where's the relationship with Elvis's blood family? Where's the connection to the people who share his DNA, who carry forward the actual Presley lineage? It doesn't exist, hasn't existed for decades, because Priscilla wanted the name without the family, the prestige without the provincial roots, the brand without the responsibility of actually being connected to people she's always considered beneath her social aspirations. The family saw this from the beginning. They watched her arrive at Graceland as a young woman, and they saw how she looked at them, at Elvis's aunts and uncles and cousins who'd raised him and loved him. She saw unsophisticated Southerners, people who didn't fit her image of what life with Elvis Presley should look like. She wanted Hollywood glamour, not Memphis authenticity. She wanted prestige, not family dinners with relatives who reminded her that Elvis came from humble beginnings. But she had no problem using that family name every single day of her life after the divorce. No problem trading on the Presley legacy when it opened doors and generated income. No problem positioning herself as part of the Presley story when it served her purposes. The actual Presleys just couldn't be part of her version of that story because they knew too much. They remembered too much. They could contradict the carefully crafted narrative she was selling. And here's the most damaging part of the illusion she built. By positioning herself as the ultimate Elvis authority, she didn't just control business decisions about the estate. She controlled how the world understands Elvis Presley as a person, what they believe about his character, his relationships, his values, his struggles. Every movie that gets made with her consultation shows Elvis through her lens. Every book she writes frames their relationship the way she wants it remembered. Every interview she gives shapes public perception of who Elvis was and what mattered to him. And conveniently, the version she sells always puts her at the center of his story. Always makes her essential to understanding him. Always positions their relationship as the great love affair, even though it lasted 6 years and ended in divorce. The truth is more complicated. The truth is that Elvis had a full, rich life before Priscilla, a deep connection to family that existed before fame, values and beliefs and relationships that shaped him long before she entered the picture. But that truth doesn't serve the brand she built. That truth doesn't make her the central figure in the Elvis Presley story. So it gets minimized, edited, reframed, until the illusion becomes so pervasive that people forget it's an illusion at all. But 50 years of carefully managed PR can't withstand the test that just came. When your own daughter removes you from control of the estate in her will, when your granddaughter has to fight you in court just to honor her mother's wishes, the illusion shatters. And everyone can finally see what was always underneath. A business arrangement, not a love story, not guardianship, not devotion. Just business. The numbers don't lie. Follow the money, and you'll see exactly what this has always been about. When Elvis died in 1977, his estate was valued at approximately $5 million. Substantial, but not astronomical by today's standards. And it was bleeding money. Maintenance on Graceland alone was crushing. Property taxes were relentless. Without Elvis's income from performances and recording, the estate was on a path toward bankruptcy within a few years. Priscilla made the decision to open Graceland to the public in 1982. And yes, that decision saved the estate from financial collapse. That part of the story is true. But here's what happened after that initial rescue. The estate didn't just stabilize. It exploded into a money-printing empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And at every single stage of that growth, Priscilla Presley was positioned to benefit. Let's talk specifics. By 2005, Elvis Presley Enterprises was generating over $45 million annually in revenue. Graceland was receiving over 500,000 visitors every year, each one paying admission fees, buying souvenirs, contributing to an ecosystem of profit built entirely on Elvis's name. Licensing deals were putting Elvis's image on everything from postage stamps to slot machines to luxury fashion collaborations. And who was at the center of every major business decision during those decades? Who approved the deals? Who negotiated the contracts? Who built relationships with corporate partners and licensing agencies? Priscilla Presley, not as a humble guardian quietly managing an inheritance, as an active businesswoman building her own empire on a foundation she didn't create. Now here's where it gets really interesting. In 2005, Priscilla and Lisa Marie made a decision to sell 85% of Elvis Presley Enterprises to Robert Sillerman's entertainment company for approximately $100 million. Lisa Marie, as the actual heir to Elvis's estate, received the bulk of that money, but Priscilla walked away with millions as well. Payment for her role, compensation for her management. A massive financial windfall from a business built on her ex-husband's legacy. Think about that transaction for a moment. A woman who divorced Elvis in 1973 just made millions of dollars from selling his legacy to a corporate entity 32 years after his death. That's not guardianship. That's equity ownership. That's treating someone's life story and artistic legacy as an asset to be monetized and eventually liquidated for personal profit. But the Elvis Presley Enterprises sale is just one piece of the financial puzzle. Let's talk about the book deals. Priscilla has written multiple memoirs about her life with Elvis. Elvis and Me alone sold millions of copies worldwide and was adapted into a television miniseries. She earned substantial royalties from those sales. Then came speaking engagements, paid appearances, documentary consultations, each one generating income, each one dependent on her connection to Elvis Presley. She's been paid for her story over and over again. Different formats, different platforms, different decades, but always the same product she's selling. Her proximity to Elvis, her years as his wife, her insider knowledge. She's monetized that 6-year marriage more thoroughly than most people monetize their entire careers. And here's what makes this so particularly galling. While Priscilla was building wealth and celebrity status on the Presley name, her relationship with her own daughter was fracturing. Lisa Marie Presley struggled financially at times, despite being Elvis's heir. She went through difficult divorces. She battled addiction. She faced enormous pressure as the daughter of an icon. And the relationship between mother and daughter became strained, complicated by business decisions and control issues surrounding the estate. Lisa Marie spoke about this, carefully and diplomatically, in various interviews over the years. She talked about how difficult it was to separate her mother's role as parent from her mother's role as business manager. She mentioned disagreements about how Elvis's legacy was being handled. She expressed concern about the commercialization of her father's memory. And then in her final years, she made that extraordinary decision. She amended her will to remove Priscilla as trustee and name her own children as successors. That wasn't impulsive. Lisa Marie was dealing with serious health issues. She knew she was making end-of-life decisions, and she chose very deliberately to remove her mother from control. What does that tell you? What would drive a daughter to legally exclude her own mother from managing her father's legacy? You don't make that decision lightly. You make it when you've seen enough, when you've experienced enough, when you know from decades of first-hand observation that the priorities aren't aligned with what they should be. Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, has been much more circumspect in public statements. She's handled the legal battle with grace. She reached a settlement with her grandmother rather than dragging the family through extended court proceedings. But the mere fact that the battle happened reveals everything. A granddaughter having to fight her grandmother in court, having to defend her mother's final wishes, having to protect her grandfather's legacy from the woman who's been claiming to protect it for 50 years. The evidence is also written in relationships. Or rather, in the absence of relationships. Priscilla's connection to Elvis's extended family has been virtually non-existent for decades. Elvis's cousins, the relatives who lived at Graceland, who were part of his daily life, who knew him in ways that had nothing to do with fame or performance, they've been systematically excluded from the official narrative. When they speak up, when they try to share their memories or correct inaccuracies in the public story, they're dismissed, marginalized, treated as unreliable sources despite being blood relatives with decades of first-hand experience. Meanwhile, Priscilla, the ex-wife who knew Elvis for only a portion of his life, remains the go-to authority that media outlets contact, that documentary filmmakers consult, that historians defer to. That's not accidental, that's strategic. Because if the actual Presley family had equal access to the public platform, if their voices were given equal weight, the narrative would shift dramatically. The stories they tell, the Elvis they remember, contradicts the version Priscilla has been selling. He was more grounded, more faithful to his roots, more concerned about family loyalty and less concerned about Hollywood sophistication than her version suggests. But those contradictions are dangerous to the brand she built. So the family gets shut out. Their memories get devalued. Their connection to Elvis gets treated as less legitimate than her 6-year marriage. The financial evidence, the family fractures, the legal battles, the systematic exclusion of blood relatives, the monetization of every possible aspect of Elvis's story, the transformation of a man's life into a product line, all of it points to the same conclusion. This was never about protecting Elvis's legacy for its own sake. It was about controlling that legacy for commercial and personal benefit. And when that control was finally challenged by the people with the strongest claim to it, Elvis's own daughter and granddaughter, Priscilla fought back. Not because it was right, not because it's what Elvis would have wanted, but because losing control meant losing the empire. The evidence is overwhelming, written in contracts and bank statements, written in strained relationships and legal filings, written in the distance between Priscilla Presley's luxurious lifestyle and the struggles Lisa Marie faced. Written in blood and dollars, and the blood was never hers to claim. Something fundamental shifted when Lisa Marie Presley died in January 2023. Not just in the legal structure of Elvis's estate, but in the entire power dynamic that's controlled his legacy for half a century. For the first time since Elvis's death, Priscilla is no longer the primary gatekeeper. She's no longer the bridge between Elvis's past and his future. That role has passed to a new generation. To Riley Keough and her siblings, to Elvis's grandchildren who carry his blood but didn't grow up in the shadow of his fame the way Lisa Marie did. And that generational transfer changes everything. Riley Keough is 35 years old. She's built her own successful acting career. She doesn't need the Presley name to be relevant or employable. She's not dependent on Elvis's legacy for her identity or her income, which means she has something Priscilla never had: freedom. Freedom to make decisions about Graceland and the estate based on what's right for Elvis's memory, not what's profitable for her personal brand. The question now is whether she'll use that freedom to course correct, whether she'll undo some of the commercialization that's turned her grandfather into a commodity, whether she'll give voice to the blood relatives who have been silenced for decades, whether she'll prioritize authenticity over profit in a way that her grandmother never could, because her grandmother's entire empire was built on profit. Early signs suggest she might. The legal battle with Priscilla, while painful, established something crucial. Riley was willing to fight for her mother's wishes even when it meant going against her grandmother publicly. She was willing to endure family conflict and media scrutiny to honor what Lisa Marie wanted. That takes courage. That takes conviction. That suggests priorities that aren't purely financial. But she's also inheriting an empire that's been operating a certain way for 40 years. Graceland generates enormous revenue. The licensing deals are locked into long-term contracts. The business relationships Priscilla built aren't easily unwound. Riley might want to change course, but the machinery of commercialization has momentum. Changing direction isn't simple. And then there's the reality that Priscilla, even at 80, isn't disappearing quietly. The settlement she reached with Riley gave her continued involvement in certain aspects of the estate. She retained specific rights. She's still giving interviews, still positioning herself as an Elvis authority, still appearing at events and maintaining her public profile as Mrs. Elvis Presley. She's not going to suddenly stop telling her version of the story. She's not going to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, she prioritized the wrong things for 50 years. At 80 years old, facing mortality, she's doubling down on the narrative she spent her entire adult life constructing. Because admitting the truth now would mean admitting that her whole post-Elvis existence was built on exploitation rather than love. That's too much for most people to face about themselves, too much cognitive dissonance, too much destruction of the identity they've carefully maintained. So she'll keep telling the story her way, keep positioning herself as the devoted guardian, keep collecting checks from projects that bear Elvis's name. But here's what's different now. The truth is out there in ways it wasn't before. The legal battle made headlines. The family conflict became public record. People started asking questions they hadn't asked before. Why would Lisa Marie remove her mother from control? Why would Riley have to fight her grandmother in court? What does that tell us about what was really happening behind the scenes all these years? The carefully maintained image has cracks in it now. Visible fractures that no amount of PR can completely smooth over. And those cracks let light in. They create space for alternative narratives, for blood relatives to speak up, for journalists to dig deeper, for fans to question whether the story they've been told for decades is actually the whole truth. This is the reckoning. Not a single dramatic moment, but a slow, inevitable shift as the generation that built the illusion ages out, and the generation that inherited the consequences takes control. Elvis Presley deserves better than what's been done to his legacy. He deserves to be remembered as the revolutionary artist he was, not the commodity he's become. He deserves to have his story told by people who loved him for reasons that had nothing to do with what he could do for them. He deserves to have his blood family's voices elevated to the same level as his ex-wife's carefully crafted narrative. Whether that happens depends on choices Riley Keough makes in the coming years, whether she has the strength to resist the commercial pressures, whether she can navigate the complicated business realities while staying true to what her mother wanted and what her grandfather deserved, whether she can honor the past without being imprisoned by it. It also depends on whether the public is willing to question the stories they've accepted as fact, whether people are willing to consider that maybe the woman who's been the loudest voice about Elvis for 50 years had motivations that weren't purely protective, whether the media will give equal platform to relatives who have been marginalized for decades. The legacy war isn't over. It's just entering a new phase. Priscilla spent 50 years building her version, brick by brick, interview by interview, business deal by business deal. Dismantling that structure, or even just offering a competing narrative that's equally visible, that's going to take time. It's going to take persistence. It's going to take people who care about truth more than they care about the comfortable story they've always believed. But here's the thing about truth. It's patient. It doesn't need to be loud to be real. It just needs people willing to speak it and people willing to listen. And for the first time in half a century, both of those things are starting to happen. Priscilla Presley confirmed at 80 years old what insiders have known all along. Through her actions, through her refusal to let go of control even when her own daughter asked her to, through 50 years of prioritizing profit and personal brand over authentic preservation. She confirmed that it was always about her, always about what she could build on Elvis's name, always about the empire, not the man. The question now is what comes next. Whether Riley and her generation can reclaim something authentic from the commercial machine. Whether Elvis's real family finally gets heard. Whether the reckoning leads to redemption. The story isn't over, but the truth is finally getting its turn to speak. If you believe Elvis Presley's real story deserves to be told by the people who actually knew him, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell because we're going deeper. Specific business deals, specific family testimonies, specific contradictions that need exposure. Share this video with anyone who cares about truth over manufactured legends.